see. Technology is going to cooperate with us today. We're just going to.
It is.
I've actually got Spectrum coming out today to. Technology is going to cooperate with us today. I'm going to close that. Got it. And record to the cloud. All right.
Awesome.
Good morning, Jessica. How are you?
I'm great, Kelly. How are you? It's good to
I'm
be back.
fabulous.
It's been a few weeks.
It has. Life has just been happening all over the place.
Yeah. Which is good.
It is good. It is good. I love the pictures of you on the beach.
Yes, I've been soaking up time with Maya already this summer. She just finished school on Friday. So we're already soaking up the sun and the nice weather and squeezing in as much time outdoors as we can.
I love it.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about today?
Yeah. So today we're talking about boundaries, which we've already started chatting about. So we've got a lot of good thoughts around this. But I kind of see this discussion as a little bit of a workshop, because I think that it's something I personally still struggle with, as much work as I've done around it. It's definitely a heavy topic. So we'll kind of be workshopping through it and discussing boundaries a little bit. And maybe we can get into a place to start when like creating them and setting them, and for anyone else out there who's struggling, maybe we can give you kind of a starting point.
Yeah. So why do we set boundaries at all? Why are they important?
I feel like personally they're important for protecting my energy, protecting my values, protecting my mission, whether that be like my mission in life or with a certain goal, or something like that. And yeah, and also a way to sort of guide me forward, keep me sort of on my path of becoming my highest self, really.
Okay. So you used a word that I really like, and I kind of want to double click on it a little bit.
All right, go on.
So the word you used was guide. We both love being outdoors. We both love doing things that are outdoorsy, and interestingly enough, I just recently saw some Facebook memories around my middle son took a trip to Philmont with his Boy Scout troop many years ago. And when they did that, they were wilderness camping for like, I don't know, 5 to 7 days. It was like a week. But they picked one of the boys to be a guide. And that guide had responsibilities. And that guide had his primary objective, his primary goal. He had one primary goal. He had to get the troop back to base camp safely. And out there, they were going to encounter things that they didn't know. so they could prepare as well as they could prepare. But his job was to get everybody back to camp and ultimately home safely.
Right.
So he was like, we're going to go this way, not that way. When he looked at the weather and realized there was going to be a storm, because they were in high mountains, so there were storms, then he had to make decisions about when to stop hiking and set camp, where to set camp. And what if we looked at boundaries in that same way as a guide to helping us choose where we're going to stop and spend time with people, where we're not going to stop and spend time with people, as a guide to helping us recognize the danger zone.
I love that metaphor. And I would even, like, as you're speaking it, what I started to think of, and again, along the same lines, but as you were using that metaphor of the scout guide, it made me think of, like, well, we're truly the guide, right? Like, I firmly believe that we have everything that we need within us, and along with our connection to the universe, God, source, whatever it is that you believe in, that connection is certainly part of that. And I almost see the boundary as being one of those tools that assists you in guiding yourself. Like you said, the scout he used a tool to understand that there was a storm coming and take an alternate route. That boundary is like a tool, to help you in that journey. I really like that. You always have the best metaphors, but I really like this one.
Well, you talked about not wanting, or kind of stumbling with boundaries a little bit, because they tend to come from a place of judgment. Does looking at boundaries as a guide remove that judgment?
I think it definitely starts to. I mean, whenever you can focus on yourself and what you're doing and what your goals are, and less about what everyone else is doing around you, certainly some judgment is removed when you're not concerned about what other people are doing. So in this metaphor, changing that to boundaries being a tool to support you in guiding you, then you're not creating them because of what anybody else is doing around you. And again, like, just for some example, if anyone's kind of wondering where that's coming from, I had just mentioned this to Kelly before we went live, was, some of these amazing tools like boundaries and self-care and different things like that have become buzzwords, so to speak, and that's great because they're amazing things, and giving them recognition and talking about them so that other people have those tools and support is great. But in the world of online and social media, they can sometimes not always come from the best place, and not always be represented in a healthy way. And I was just sharing, with boundaries, a lot of times we can see on social media people doing like just the opposite, like creating them because they don't like something someone else is doing, or something else someone's saying, or this person's toxic, and and that sort of thing. So that's kind of where we were coming at with that. But I guess looking at it from an energy standpoint too, which we've mentioned before, Kelly and I went through the same coaching program that focuses a lot primarily around coaching from an energy standpoint. And if you look at it from that, and I always hate to categorize energy as positive or negative because it goes so much deeper than that. But it's the easiest to understand. But looking at it from that standpoint, if you're creating a boundary from judgment of something someone else is doing or saying or how they're being, you're creating it from a negative energy standpoint,
Right.
which is not really serving anyone. But if you're able to shift your mindset and look at it from like the metaphor that you used, and kind of focusing on you and not what other people are doing, and you could potentially create them and set them from a positive standpoint, which obviously would feel much better for everyone.
I think probably everyone has been on the receiving end as well as the giving end of, nope, you're a toxic person. I'm not going to communicate with you anymore. You're not allowed in my space.
Right.
I think probably everybody's heard that from somebody and probably said that. And no, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to say that. It just kind of feels, sort of icky.
Mm.
And it doesn't feel good to hear it. Who wants to be, if to say that or to hear that feels like an attack. It feels like you're being condemned. And there is a lot of judgment in that. There's a tremendous amount of judgment in that. Nobody likes to be judged. The other thing that does is that presents, if you said that to me, if you said, Kelly, I've decided you're just a very toxic person and I don't want to be around you anymore. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Don't call me. I'm going to feel judged, and I'm going to feel a sense of shame. What did I do? And then I have to choose what to do with that, which is a whole nother topic. But when we can come to this issue of boundaries, like you said, from a place of values, as I was listening to you, I was kind of going back to the mountains and the idea of walking through the mountains and the guide, and thinking if as a guide I'm walking and I have people behind me and I see a rattlesnake, that rattlesnake isn't bad. It's in its natural environment. It's doing what it was created to do. It could hurt me and it could hurt the people that I'm there to enjoy their company. And so if we get close to that snake, it can hurt us. Doesn't mean the snake is bad.
Right.
It's easy for us to have a lot of judgment around snakes because people, myself included, not a fan. But it's the snake in and of itself isn't bad. It's there for a purpose. It's there for a reason. It behooves us to go around it, to not get close to it. And we can do that without judging. There was a time in my life that I would have, not personally, but I would have encouraged somebody else with me to kill it. I wouldn't do that today.
Yeah, I think that I like that addition to the metaphor, right? Like you can, yeah, I mean, the boundary right there can be seen as going around something to protect yourself from danger, but without placing any judgment. Like you said, like with the snake, it's there, it's not right or wrong, it's in its natural habitat. And we can do that with other people and other things and not place any judgment on it, but also choose to go around it and protect ourselves and do what's safe for ourselves. Yeah, I love that.
So I mentioned something to you, and as you know, and I've mentioned several times, I do a lot of work with trauma survivors. And one of the things that trauma survivors, I think, struggle with a little bit more than maybe people who haven't suffered, and in this specifically, I'm talking about and referring to survivors of sexual abuse or physical abuse. We tend to carry shame. We tend to feel like we did something wrong. We did something to cause it. And that's one of the first things that we really dig in and work on to get past it. But I've come to recognize and realize that shame is an internal boundary buster. We've talked about things that are outside, the toxicity and judgment. But when I feel a tremendous amount of shame towards myself and I'm aiming it at me, it makes it very difficult for me to set boundaries even for myself, to do things that are healthy for me and establishing those healthy relationships. And sometimes boundaries are around other people. I'm gonna limit my communication with this person because it doesn't feel good. But what about my relationships with myself and the way that I talk to myself?
Right. If there is an internal trust with yourself, if you're doubting yourself, doubting your capabilities, your worth, doubting even doubting like your perspective of yourself in a situation, anything that would cause you to like not fully trust yourself, you're not going to be able to create a boundary because you're already in a place of doubt and distrust. And so therefore, like how can you create that boundary?
And not only that, it goes deeper into deserving, being worthy of joy, being worthy of being happy.
Right.
I asked a client the other day, said, are you willing to extend the amount of time each day that you are happy? And she was like, well, of course. And I was like, okay, now stop and think about that. Because we were just talking about, and I'm not going to get into the issue she was talking about, but she was just talking about the things that she does to sabotage herself. And I'm like, so, how do we move past that place of limiting ourselves? We've talked a lot about limiting beliefs. That was a cornerstone of our education. But what about limiting how much joy and how much happiness we allow ourselves to feel and experience?
Yeah.
I
feel like we could definitely do a whole one of these, like on self-sabotage. Maybe that would be another topic coming up. Yeah. It's so true though. I mean, how going back to your metaphor of the scout guide, I mean, if the scout didn't think that he could be a guide, if he didn't think he was good enough or had the right skills or trusted his capabilities to be the guide, could he have done it? Would he have used the tools? Would he have would he have used the tools that he needed to get him, not only himself, but the people in his group where they needed to go into safety, if he didn't trust his capabilities or think he could do it?
Yeah. And there was, in that particular case, and as I'm hearing you talk more about that, I'm thinking they chose carefully. The adult leaders chose very carefully who they put in that position. And as in this last year, and as you know, I went through a divorce last year, and one of the things that I did when I moved into my house, and all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I was living alone, and I realized I had choices to make. I could sink into depression or I could not. And I chose to create a list of people, doctors, influencers that were offering me tools. So I put guides in place, and I didn't really think of them necessarily as guides until today. Dr. Caroline Leaf, I love her work. Dr. Brene Brown, love her work. Dr. Eric Berg talks a lot about he's more into the physical health and how things affect our bodies. And I was very careful and intentional in finding people who were in alignment with my values. And I spent hours, and I mean hours, listening to, just absorbing their energy, their material. And they were becoming my guide, and that's where I was choosing to spend my time because it was supporting me. And I think that boundaries can be proactive as well as reactive. And I think when we approach boundaries from a proactive, I'm going to choose to spend my time with listening to Brene Brown's podcast or Dr. Leaf's podcast or Dr. Romney's podcast, then the other things that are potentially damaging, just kind of, there's just not space for it.
Right. Right. Yeah, I like that. I like that perspective a lot. And I think that we have to come to a place of, like we spoke about, trust and value and worth and all of that. And I think we have to come to a place where we work through some of that internally and get to a place where, again, not everything's fixed necessarily, but we get to a place where we value ourselves and our worth to us to an extent where oh no, Kelly's gone.
There we
she's
are.
back. Oh goodness, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying that doing that internal work, getting to a place where we value our worth enough and trust ourselves enough to be able to set that boundary, and begin to set those boundaries. So yeah, I think like with anything that we've talked about, it really starts within. Yeah. Oh, I think you're frozen again. Kelly's gone. We almost made it the whole conversation without any tech issues. We were close. I don't know if Kelly's coming back this time. All right, I'm not sure if Kelly's coming back this time, so I am going to go ahead and, oh, I think she's back. She's back.
Yeah, internet is not, they're supposed to come out later today and figure out what's going on with this. So
Yeah, you've been having trouble with it at your house. Oh, you're frozen again. Oh, goodness.
I apologize.
You're here. It keeps going in and out. Oh, you're gone again. All right. Well, I think that's our signal to wrap up this conversation on boundaries. But I guess I don't know, I guess to summarize, I would say to Kelly's gone again, to continue to create those boundaries from from within, certainly first, creating them from a place of love and trust and acceptance with yourself, versus judgment towards other people and other things, and really just start within, start building trust within, start creating boundaries with yourself first, um, and then add to them. All right, I'm gonna sign us off for today. We'll see you next time.